In most of the world, liberalism has the same meaning that it always did. But you're quite right that in the United States and to some extent in Canada, liberal has come to mean the left. And I think the reason for that is that beginning in the late 19th century and for much of the early part of the 20th century, there was a movement called progressivism. And progressivism wanted to use science to make the human race progress. And the particular kind of science that they advocated for at first was kind of unsavory. Eugenics. The early progressives were all strong eugenicists, and they wanted to use selective breeding to improve the human race. So it's actually pretty terrifying. But progressives, to be fair, progressives since 1933 or so have mostly said the job of government should be to improve the lives of those who are least well off because they're caught in a web of gigantic powers that are beyond their capacity to resist. So corporations, large institutions, individuals are not able to act as equals in the face of those gigantic powers. And so we're going to have the state put a thumb on the scale to balance powers in favor of the masses. Now, progressivism is not really consistent with liberalism. So it's odd that that's what many people who are progressives, who should be called progressives now, would call themselves liberals, because they're not so concerned about rule of law. They're not so concerned about equality before the law in terms of opportunity. What they're worried about is equality of outcome, which means that they would like to redistribute income and wealth, and in some cases power, in order to get a purely equal society. The problem is that the liberalism would say equality before the law means we get all treated the same by the state. To achieve equality of outcome, the state has to treat us unequally, handicapping those who are most able, who produce the most value, who have the most ability, the most energy for whatever reason. And it is Orwellian to call that sort of enforced redistribution to get an equality of outcome, to call that liberalism is just mistaken. But it is what the word has come to mean in the United States, at least. So classical liberals are those who try to separate themselves from progressivism and from left liberalism, saying that their commitment is to minimal government and the rule of law. And so there aren't that many classical liberals, but it is pretty clear, I think, what the meaning of classical liberalism is. It is a harking back to the older meaning of liberalism.
And I'm just going to pull up a quote here, which I think highlights that in a way. He says, "It is true, of course, that in Germany before 1933 and in Italy before 1922, communists and Nazis or fascists clashed more frequently with each other than with other parties. They competed for the support of the same type of mind and reserved for each other the hatred of the heretic, but their practice showed how closely they are related to both the real enemy, the man with whom they had nothing in common and whom they could not hope to convince is the liberal of the old type."